Senator Blumenthal calls Kennedy's announcement earth-shaking, gut-wrenching. Jeff Toobin says in 18 months abortion will be illegal in some 20 states. Is this potentially the end of Roe v. Wade?
Well, it's ironic. The polling is very clear that the overwhelming majority of the American people support Roe versus Wade. We have differences of opinion on abortion, but the idea of overturning Roe versus Wade would be a decision that reflects only a small minority of the American people. So I hope very much that the next nominee to for the Supreme Court does not hold that position. But the bottom line is this is obviously an enormously important issue. Everything to do with women's rights, having to do with gay rights, having to do with solidifying the pro-corporate, anti-worker wing of the Supreme Court.
Do you have any confidence that President Trump would appoint somebody to your liking? I mean, it certainly seems that, he did publish a list during the campaign of potential nominees. Gorsuch was on that list, and he's indicated this next one will come from that list as well.
No, I have no hope that he will appoint anything resembling a moderate or a justice who will take both sides into consideration. I think what we're looking for is the nomination of a right-wing extremist. I would say this, Anderson. You may recall that when Merrick Garland's nomination was brought forth by President Obama, Mitch McConnell said, let the American people decide. You shouldn't be considering this important nomination just before an election. And he obstructed it and refused to allow a vote to take place. I would say to Mitch McConnell, remember what you said when Obama was president. Let the American people have a vote in November as to whether or not they want to overturn Roe versus Wade. Whether they want to allow discrimination against the gay and lesbian community, whether or not they want votes to make life harder for the working people of this country. Remember what you said when Obama was president. And the second point that I would make, Anderson, is that we have very few, but we have some Republicans here in the Senate who believe that it should be a woman who controls her own body and not the state or federal government. And I hope that they will work with those of us who hold that position in opposition to any nominee who wants to take away that basic right that women should have.
On what you said about Mitch McConnell, your Democratic Senate colleagues have been accusing McConnell of hypocrisy. If the shoe, though, was on the other foot and Justice Kennedy retired under a Democratic president and a Democratic Congress just before midterms, wouldn't Democrats also push to get a new nominee through?
Well, I think you need some consistency here. I mean, we have the most recent example, and that is President Obama nominated an individual to the Supreme Court, by the way, a pretty moderate guy. And the Republican leadership said, no, we're not going to let you vote on him. We should have an election first. So all I would say here is that I would hope that Mitch McConnell remembers what he said when Obama was president.
If it does not go the way you would like it to go, and Roe v. Wade is overturned by the Supreme Court, and it is made illegal in as many as 20 states, as Jeff Toobin mentioned, how big a drive do you think that will be for the left, for all people who are supportive of the right to have an abortion?
I think it would be a very important factor in bringing people out to the polls. There are differences of opinion in this country about abortion, when abortion should be legal or not. I'm very strongly pro-choice. But as I said earlier, the vast majority of the people believe that Roe versus Wade is the law of the land and should remain the law of the land. And I think that if Trump nominates somebody who wants to undo that constitutional right that women now have, you're going to see a massive uprising on the part of people all over this country, not just women, but men who think that that decision should be left to women and not to the government.
Now, for the second time in 18 months, President Trump will make a decision that will impact our country for decades and, yes, for generations. With Justice Anthony Kennedy now retiring, the president is now tasked with picking his replacement, a task he does not take lightly, nor should he. Take a look from earlier today.
He's been a great justice of the Supreme Court. He is a man who is displaying great vision. He's displayed tremendous vision and tremendous heart, and he will be missed, but he will be retiring, and we will begin our search for a new justice of the United States Supreme Court that will begin immediately. We have a very excellent list of great talented, highly educated, highly intelligent, hopefully tremendous people. I think the list is very outstanding. When I was running, I put down a list of 20 people because, not being a politician, I think people wanted to hear what some of my choices may be, and it was pretty effective. And I think you see the kind of quality that we're looking at when you look at that list. But I added 5 additional people to the list. So it will be somebody from that list.
I want to take a minute, by the way, for all of you never Trumpers, and you all know who you are. I'm thinking about naming names, but not tonight. I do have a message for you. If you had your way, remember we'd say the Supreme Court is at stake. That alone means everything. Hillary Rodham Clinton now would be making this now a second appointment in the terms of the judicial course of American history, which would alter this country for decades to come. It's time to admit, a lot of you, how wrong you were about Donald Trump, although I'm not going to hold my breath tonight. So as the president has mentioned many times, he is committed to picking from a solid list of qualified originalist justices who have a proven track record of upholding the Constitution, not legislating from the bench, people whose judicial philosophy is one that believes in separation of powers, co-equal branches of government. Now, sadly, this is the exact opposite of what Democrats and people like Hillary would want. Instead, the left, they want judges who even value and cite international law, not our own Constitution. People that would legislate from the bench. People that believe in this evolving interpretation that means nothing of our Constitution. What the left can never accomplish through the ballot box or through real legislation, they actually try to accomplish by abusing the court system and using activist judges to accomplish all their left-wing dreams and ideology. Now, make no mistake, as soon as the president taps, whoever Anthony Kennedy's replacement will be, you are going to witness the single most contentious, nasty, vicious, dirty propaganda, character assassination campaign. It will be one of the most contentious political battles in decades. Tonight, your news media is already going there. So in light of today's breaking news, yes, it's time for another Hannity history lesson to bring you. This time, it involves just how desperate and low Democrats will go and literally malign the character of good, decent, smart people and what they plan to do to the president's next Supreme Court nominee, whoever it ends up being. They will try to destroy them. Let's start with the outgoing Justice Anthony Kennedy. Now, for 30 years, Kennedy, he's accumulated what is a very mixed track record. Nominated by Ronald Reagan in 1988, many have referred to him as the court's swing justice. He saved Roe versus Wade from being overturned. He upheld the use of affirmative action, extended legal rights to foreign terrorists at Gitmo. But Kennedy also voted to kill Obamacare, preserve Second Amendment rights, and most recently, he voted to uphold the president's travel ban. It's kind of weird because he never had a judicial philosophy that he seemed to adhere to, like Justice Thomas or Justice Scalia or Justice Alito. And now with President Trump poised to nominate what he has said he would do in the campaign, a strict originalist, to replace the very unpredictable Kennedy, Democrats are now sharpening their spears just like they did back in 1987. Let's go down memory lane. Now, before Reagan nominated Anthony Kennedy to the Supreme Court, he did tap somebody who was a judicial genius. He tapped a strict constitutional originalist. His name was Judge Robert Bork. And hell-bent on preventing Robert Bork from becoming a Supreme Court justice, Senate Democrats engaged in one of the most disgusting smear campaigns, which culminated on the Senate floor with outright lies from Senator Ted Kennedy. Watch how low they can go. Take a look.
Robert Bork's America is a land in which women would be forced into back alley abortions, blacks would sit at segregated lunch counters, rogue police could break down citizens' doors in midnight raids, and school children could not be taught about evolution. Writers and artists would be censured at the whim of government.
All lies, all attempts to scare, intimidate the American people. Now, after what you just saw, Democrats were able to actually block the nomination. That's how we now have ended up with the term being borked, which, by the way, the Oxford English Dictionary describes as, quote, obstructs someone by systematically defaming or vilifying them. Let's fast forward a couple of years later. The confirmation of now Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. During his Senate hearings, this goes back to 1991, Democrats rolled out his former colleague, Anita Hill, to make sexual harassment allegations against him. The process became so vicious and nasty, Justice Thomas, in what is now infamous, famous comments, he referred to it as a high-tech lynching. Watch this.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Wow. Powerful, powerful remarks. You know, character assassination, look at just the last week and what's happening and what has been said and what is being said about women and Secretary Nielsen and Pam Bondi and so many others, and Ivanka and Melania and Sarah Sanders. By the way, if you want to read one of the best books you'll ever read, it's written by Clarence Thomas. It's called My Grandfather's Son. Now, if you think what you saw is bad, it's about to get actually probably worse, with the ideological makeup of the Supreme Court now hanging in the balance after President Trump successfully nominated originalist Neil Gorsuch to the court. Senate Democrats are about to pull out all stops. They'll do and say anything, just like Ted Chappaquiddick Kennedy, to block Donald Trump's pick. Now, we're not even a day out from Justice Kennedy's announcement, and the left is already in full-on, total freak-out, panic, scare the American people mode and full-on lying mode. Watch this.
Are you guys ready to maybe rip up some of the rules that have, as Rachel said, limited Democrats?
Yes, Nicole, and I know we're ready.
For the fabric of our democracy, Democrats should dig in hard here and do everything they conceivably can do to block this nomination, any nomination, from going forward.
Our Republican colleagues in the Senate should follow the rule they set in 2016, not to consider a Supreme Court justice in an election year.
It's time for Democrats to throw down. And what I mean by that is that we've been playing by the rule book, and Donald Trump and Republicans have been playing by street rules. We need to play by street rules.
Don't allow a vote on this. Don't have a hearing. Don't have a meeting. Don't let anything go forward. Don't play ball with this decision.
Merely a preview of coming attractions.